Welcome to TSB, a Fox River podcast, where we just talk about how believers are residents here on the earth, but they're headed towards heaven, their home. So how is a believer to think, talk, and live out their faith in this space between heaven and earth? Today's topic is a lively one. It's abortion. Yeah, what do you think, Nate?
Spicy, difficult, one of the most, if not the most controversial subjects you could possibly ever talk about.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of like super sensitivity levels happening with this one, right? Because, I mean, just for the obvious, we'll get to that in a second, but one thing I want to keep in view for just all of us, including Nate, you and I, but all of the TSB community is just this, it's the gospel. So it's that the love of Jesus Christ, right? He came to die for sinners like you and I. And because of his finished work on the cross and because he made a way to God, we have awareness of his love, right? He demonstrated his love for us, that he died for us. And we can have forgiveness. Wow, how beautiful is that? And we can have redemption and restoration, and we can turn the corner. I mean, and that leads me into one of the reasons this is so sensitive is because a lot of people are personally touched by this issue of abortion, right?
Yeah, it's everywhere.
It is everywhere, okay? I think one thing to keep in mind as well is just, it's just charged because, you get one side, the pro-life side, and they're celebrating that the murder of unborn babies.
Oh, they're not celebrating it, but
is now. I didn't finish the sentence. Is now illegal. All right, at a federal level, right?
Great clarification.
Yeah, an important one.
Yeah.
But the other side, right? Pro-choice, they are mourning the loss of freedoms, right? So you get both sides that are just like truly the way they view it are celebrating or mourning,
And that's amazing to look at it from their perspective too, because they're human beings too, and they think they're correct just like we are.
Right.
And they also have a whole different perspective on this than we do. And they deserve to be looked at from their perspective as well. Yeah, they do think it is a loss of choice, and they don't enjoy that.
Right. Yeah. Right. I think some interesting stats, right?
Yes.
Well, let me say this first.
Yeah.
What is motivating this conversation apart from the obvious that this is an issue? I think it's because the recent overturning of Roe v. Wade, right?
Yeah.
Back in 1973, but now 2022 at a federal level, once again, it's been overturned.
Big news,
right? And apart from that leak, I don't know how this stuff happens. Like, who would have thunk it?
First time in history,
right? I know, but
amazing.
I remember hearing that. I seen that on the news, and I'm like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. Like, this is
nobody
huge
did.
News. Right. It's just
nobody did.
But some of those stats, I mean, you got Catholics, for example, all right?
Yeah.
50% of Catholics support abortion being legal.
Yeah.
33% of Protestants, all right, like Fox River Christian Church is a Protestant church. 33% of parishioners, all right, in the Protestant church support abortion. Now those stats just blow my mind.
Yeah, we're no better. I mean, that's amazing. 1/3. Can you imagine picking out a room of 100 people and 1/3 of them
in a church?
In a church. It's amazing.
And I know not all of us feel this way in the church, which is indicative of the stat itself, right?
Yeah.
But just to me personally, I'm like, wow, that just blows my mind. And I start to ask the question, why? Why? How could that happen? Why is that the case? And I think many Christians are just uninformed or uninterested, right?
Yeah.
They just don't care about it, right?
Care about it.
In the biblical position, like where does God land on this? How does God think about infanticide or abortion? How does he think about that? And I think one thing, Nate, I'm really curious what you think about this, but one thing as Christians, I think we as a church just forget all the time. I know I do personally, is that, man, I'm accountable to God. Like the day is coming, and quickly, by the way, where I am going to stand, you are going to stand, everybody, you are going to stand before God, and we're going to have to give an account of our lives. Now, this goes for unbelievers and believers, right? God is going to evaluate or judge how I lived my life here on the earth in those short years that he gave me.
And the space between.
In the space between. Well said. Well said. Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's amazing how many people are sort of throwing themselves into this camp when they don't really, I think, know about the historical values of Christianity on this topic. This is a fairly new phenomenon. I mean, this is not something that was just came up 200, 300 years ago. Abortion is a relatively modern thing. It's amazing. You were talking about earlier about some of the origins of abortion, right? And the abortion rights movement. Mrs. Sanger, Margaret Sanger.
Yeah.
You had that amazing story about Margaret Sanger and where her intentions were in this abortion debate.
Yeah. I mean, she was like totally racist.
Yeah, yeah, she was.
I mean, totally racist. In the abortion, right? Planned Parenthood, which she founded, it's a way to kill black children.
It still does.
And still does, right?
Yeah.
I think one thing that just comes up a lot is especially the past year or two is Black Lives Matter, right?
Yeah.
But the whole I don't even have words to express how crazy this is. If Black Lives Matter. Right, yeah. We're just going to wade into the water just a little bit, and then we'll pull back because we don't want to get off track. We really
for sure.
But if Black Lives Matter, then how come a lot of the same people who advocate Black Lives Matter, in a political sense, are advocating abortion, which kills Black lives in the womb by the millions?
A lot of them.
Yeah. So it's like, man, this doesn't make sense. It's it truly is illogical. All right. And whenever the devil's behind something. The illogic of it, the disorder of it comes to light.
Yeah,
okay?
it's incredibly destructive. And when we're talking about abortion too, I think you would argue, Mr. Pastor over here, that probably the most important part is what does the Bible say about abortion, right? You have any, give it to me. You got any hot verses on this? Any hot takes? What does God have?
I do. Okay. Let me preface it like this. I think a lot of the common questions around this discussion are women's rights.
For sure.
Well, my body, my choice. That sort of stuff.
Slogan,
there's a lot there, right? Quality of life comes in. Compassion for victims of rape or incest, that has come up a ton lately.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just a tiny, tiny, tiny slice. I'm not minimizing it in an important sense, a significance sense, but statistically, a tiny slice of what's going on when it comes to abortions. But those are common questions. But Nate, I'll even let you answer this one because
whoa, okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you. All right,
okay.
No, but I would love for you to answer. What's the real question? The real question isn't those things. Those are at best sub questions.
Yeah, that's my favorite question. And this whole debate, I think what's most central and that even Christians forget is we're always going around the edges of the debate. The core question is it alive? Right? Even people who are pro-abortion, right, don't believe murder is okay. They don't. What they believe is that it's not human to begin with, right? Hitler did not believe that murder was okay. He believed that killing things that weren't human was okay, right? And that's what he did to the Jews. I'm not saying that people who are pro-abortion are anti-Jewish or anything, but it's the core concept is it alive? And if you can convince someone that it is alive, it is a long stretch to get them to suddenly say, well, even though it's alive, we can still kill it. That is the blazing target that you have to go after. Because if you can convince someone that it's alive, it doesn't make a whole ton of sense to kill it, to end it.
Totally. And it's interesting, 95% of biologists agree.
Yeah, that's including people who are pro-choice.
Which is fascinating, right? But they agree that life begins at fertilization or at conception.
Yeah.
Right? Which is a core tenet of the pro-life platform or argument, right?
Yeah. And that's not a small study either. That was upwards of 1,000, if I'm correct, biologists across the country, right?
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Right.
Amazing.
But hey, let's get back to what you asked, brother.
Yeah.
Okay. What does God say?
Right?
I think there's a bunch of texts that are kind of going through my mind right now, but I want to go to one in particular, Psalm 139.
Okay.
I just want to hang out there for a second. I want to share something. Now,
Let's do that.
Yeah, David wrote this psalm, and I'm just going to pick out verses 13 through 16. Here's what David says in Psalm 139, verses 13 through 16. Here you go. He's talking to God. For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. Now it's just beautiful and poetic. And
very poetic.
So truthful is every part of God's word. But I want to point something out.
Yeah.
In those verses, we see God speaking through David, right? And as he pens Psalm 139. And what is brought to the surface is that God sees David as a person before he was even conceived.
Born. Mind blown.
Yeah, before he was born, before he was conceived. He's like, I've got your days written out. And God is seeing David as a person. He's also seeing David as a person when he's in the womb. And he's also seeing David as a person after he's born. So we see that to what you brought up earlier.
Is it alive?
Is it alive? Yeah. The baby is alive. It's a human being. Like the whole
amazing.
Time. Yeah. So we look to God. Other things to consider are Psalm 51, verse 5 in particular, where I was conceived in iniquity. Well,
big word.
Yeah, iniquity or sin. How can someone inside the uterus be sinful if they're not a person, right? So it implies humanity while in the womb. God also talks, some of us may be mildly familiar with this, is Leviticus 17:14, where God says the life is in the blood. Now, interestingly enough, you say, okay, when is there blood in the baby? When is it circulating?
Yeah.
Let me say this first. At 3 weeks, there's a heartbeat that's detectable in the baby inside the womb.
Blood already.
And then 5 weeks, that's when blood is circulating through the body, oxygenated blood. So it's fascinating. So, I mean, this isn't the end all be all, but there's oxygen in the blood. And if there's blood, there's life. It's fascinating stuff, right? I think the most compelling part, and we won't camp out here for more than 2 seconds. I wish we could spend longer, but God says that people, every man and woman is made in God's image, right? Made, not born, but made. So when does that occur? It's at fertilization.
The construction.
Fascinating stuff. So abortion comes from Margaret Sanger. She kind of came with this.
Yeah, what would you say? You've got, like, we've obviously got motives here, right?
Big time.
I mean, the Bible also says that the love of money is the root of all evil, right?
A lot of money.
A lot of money, right? Like how much are we talking here? How much moolah?
$1 billion. Woo! $1 billion. We're talking 65 since 1973, 65 million legal abortions have occurred in the United States since 1973.
And how big is our population? It's like 360 million?
Yeah, 350,
That's
give or
crazy.
take million. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You know, if an Einstein is like 1 in a million, right? How many Einsteins have we thrown away through abortion?
Many.
It's amazing.
Many
People and awesome, inventors, scientists, tradespeople that are just taken away.
Just gone, right?
Yeah.
But this is the fingerprint of Satan, right? So as you brought up, this abortion in its current form is relatively new. But Satan has been seeking to kill babies for a really long time, like thousands and thousands of years, So this is the fingerprint of Satan. God is all about life. The devil is all about death.
Yeah.
All right. So when we see an effort to kill or destroy life, or some people might see it the possibility of life, pre-life maybe, it's an effort of the enemy. I mean, plain and simple.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. Yeah.
And if and going into this, I think an amazing thing to talk about is just how do we communicate lovingly with the people in our lives who are pro-abortion, right? Like, what does it say? It's like 1 Peter 3 something. You're going to have to help me out here. It's like, always be prepared to give a defense for what you believe, and forgetting the last little bit.
And
something like do it in kindness, right? Or do it politely. There are some tactics, right? Have you ever, you ever heard of like the sled tactic? It's like a Scott Klusendorf thing. You want to level us in on that?
I've heard. Well, let me lean on you for it,
Okay.
because it's size, right? So here, these are the common arguments that come up, right?
To deny humanity to a child, right? Yeah.
size,
right? Level of development, environment, and degree of dependency. You can go kind of delve into that a little bit more on your own. But those are pretty much the four main things that are always going to be brought up every time when you're speaking with people on this.
Now, why is that valuable, Nate? Why is what use of that? Because honestly, when I get in conversations like this, or even before, I see the opportunity for conversation, I just get really nervous.
Oh yeah.
Most of the time, honestly, even though Pastor Bill, right, I just chicken out. I'm like, oh man. Yeah. So how can that help me? How can SLED help me?
Yeah, SLED is amazing because you're right. When you're, it's not an argument. Don't consider it an argument. If you're getting into an argument with someone, you're not convincing anybody, right? Take it as a moment of just sitting there and trying to understand their position, right? If they have the better position and they're right, then switch, right? 100%. If we're wrong, we shouldn't be having this position too, right? And, you spoke on the matter of getting uppity or really warm and terrified when you're communicating with people. I think we've lost as Christians the art of questions, right? Using questions to get people to believe things. Like Jesus, right? It's 307 something questions throughout the Bible. I mean, you go in the Bible and it's what should we do with these coins, Jesus? Or, who should we pay taxes to? And Jesus is well, whose head is on the coin? It's dagnabbit, Jesus, you didn't answer the question. You just asked a question, right? But it's it's amazing, right? Because it's always it's really important how effective questions are. I took a course in sales recently, right? Mm-hmm. And they're transitioning now in sales, that in sales, you're never supposed to make statements. You're always supposed to ask questions, right? Mm-hmm. For a good portion, right? And that is the most effective way they found of selling people on things, right?
Because you get people to think.
You throw the ball in their court, and you can be sort of devious about this, right? You can use questions to lead people down a chain of events or a thought chain, right? I think when you're debating someone or you're talking with someone about this, measure the amount of times you're making statements and just try to cut it down as much as possible. Don't use statements, use questions, right? And you can format your questions into this amazing little slide, you can go down and just get people to think about things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And when it comes to abortion, it's maybe in sales, with the wrong attitude, it could be, I got to deceive, I got to trick somebody into buying this product. No. Right. But with Christianity, we have the comfort of the truth, right? Yeah. It's hey, let's lead somebody toward the truth, right? And if you're asking me questions, I mean, I've had this many times on a variety of theological topics where I'm clearly wrong, but at the time I didn't realize it, okay? Yeah. And somebody just asks questions and I'm I get to a point sometimes where it's man, I can't defend that.
I was wrong.
Yeah. It's a beautiful technique. And it's really helpful just to arrive at the truth or maybe think in some ways that, I just wasn't willing to think about before,
And questions just aren't just an abortion thing too. It is such a versatile tool in everything, in every avenue of your life. When you're communicating with people about Jesus, questions. Jesus himself, the master, right, used effective questions all the time, at an infuriating level of questions.
Some other things we can do is and it kind of it's related to what we just talked about, but it's just engage in conversation. A lot of times Christians notoriously are they just stay silent, and you get this vocal minority which rises up and they get the stage and they get the floor and that kind of sways society. But I think as Christians, one thing that we're called to is speak the truth. But you said, in love, right? So we need to have those conversations.
And people want to have those conversations too. Right. They really do. You want to talk about spirituality with people? A shocking amount are actually really open to talking about that. They want to know the word. They want to know what happens to them after they die. They want to know opinions on different things. Maybe not your opinion, but they want to say their own opinion a little bit. But yeah. So
that's the nice, when we're having those conversations, it's okay, the other person shares their opinion, we get to share ours, and even if they're, if we're similarly like-minded, it's we still get to share opinions. That's part of the joy of conversation and dialogue, right?
It's fun.
But ultimately what we want to do is we want to direct our gaze, but also everyone else, we want to direct them to Christ. What does God say about this? And when we do that, here's what we find, that abortion is clearly wrong. If you look at it from a biblical worldview, biblical perspective, there is no question about it. Abortion is murder, just plainly said. And we've got to be really, really careful to align our minds, right? To renew our minds, all right? Be transformed by God by the renewing of our mind. We need to go to God and have him transform us to see the truth. So one thing that I would love to hear is on Discord. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I know there's a ton of just different thoughts, opinions, and some of them extremely strong. Okay. Man, let's talk about it in Discord. Hope you'll hop on there. That's going to be about it for today.
I think so.
Yeah, there's a ton of other questions. We left a lot on the table, like probably 95% of what we could have talked about is left on the table.
Well, we got something else coming up, don't we? Right?
We do.
Even better.
We do. Next week is what, Nate? Hit us.
Transgenderism, right?
Right. Man, how relevant is that nowadays? That also is everywhere, right? So we're gonna talk about that next week. It's gonna be awesome. Okay, so hey, I hope you guys, if you haven't done so, subscribe to the TSB channel. Like I said, get on Discord, and man, make sure you hit the thumbs up button as well. We'll see you next week. Can't wait. We can continue to figure out how to live out our faith in the space between.